오늘 본 칠링 뼛속까지 스며드는 추위를 뚫고 밖에 나가서 다이소 가서 딱풀을 사왔습니다. 이게 영어신문 스크랩하는데 필수인데 그거 떨어져 가길래 그 다음에 5,000원짜리 김이 모락모락 나는 만두를, 감자 고기 만두를 먹었는데 5,000원짜리도 맛있는데 이 망해보면 5,000원짜리의 행복. 막걸리 1,000원짜리를 마셔도 막걸리 1,000원짜리가 있습니다. 우리 동네에. 저 남원에서 우리 고향에서 올라오는, 세상에 어떻게 그렇게 싸게 가져오는지 모르겠는데 아마 서울에 진출하려고 하는 모양인데 막걸리 한 병만 사도 2, 3일 나눠 먹어도 해피하다. 망해보면 1,000원도 해피하고 5,000원짜리도 해피하고 인생이 새로 보입니다. 자, 오늘 날짜 뉴욕타임즈를 안 읽었는데 오늘 제 맘대로 뉴욕타임즈를 한번 읽어보겠습니다. 1월 23일 날짜, 오늘 날짜입니다. Can Elon Musk really get away with his latest plan? Angela, an assistant professor at Gonzaga University's School of Law in Spokane, Washington, can't get enough of Elon Musk. For better or worse, he's like the gift that keeps on giving to corporate law professors, because there's just so much. It actually helped me teach the material. The students relate to Musk, and I can say to them, here's the perfect example of what not to do. The latest perfect example is what Mr. Musk wrote on last week on X, which he owns. He said he's uncomfortable working to make the Tesla into a leader in artificial intelligence and robotics unless he has 25% of the voting shares in Tesla. Unless that is the case, he wrote, I would prefer to build products outside of Tesla. To Mr. Anelios and other experts in corporate law, Mr. Musk's threat is audacious for reasons I'll get into, but it is also a teachable moment in that it subverts principles concerning how corporations, their boards, and their executives work with one another. Mr. Musk has repeatedly said that his vision is for Tesla to be a leader in AI and robotics. People bought shares because they believed him. Now he's saying that he might develop those technologies outside of Tesla, so the car maker would presumably have to buy them like any other arm's length customer. That would be a huge blow to Tesla's value. Unless, of course, Mr. Musk gains the 25% voting control he wants. And how much would that cost? He has about 13% of the shares now, and the company is valued at about $667 billion. So labeling him up to 25% would be a gift to him of around $80 billion. That would more than make him whole for his losses on X, the company bought partly with cash raised from selling his own Tesla shares. Quotes of the day: justice being taken away then, what are kingdoms but greater robberies? For what are robberies themselves but little kingdoms? Attempting to tame the MAGA Shiru, MAGA Shiru. Flipping back and forth between wins and losses in Hollywood and Iowa, I couldn't help thinking that Trump was at the wrong celebration. Rachel said her network's decision was not out of spite. It's not personal. It's strictly business. As the Michael said, MSNBC's business model, and after all, is playing Trump 24 hours a day. Playing. Maureen Dowd has a cold. Not quite the same ring as Frank Sinatra has a cold. Gay Talesa's legendary 1966 Esquire profile of the crooner. Nevertheless, I did catch a cold in Arctic. That's the Moines. So on caucus night, I stayed in my hotel room watching TV and munching on cheeses, flipping between wins and losses in Hollywood and Iowa. There wasn't any custom Louis Vuitton on display in the frozen tundra of Iowa, but there were some parallels beyond the abysmal turnout for both of the shows. The Emmys did a tribute to the Sopranos and James. Donald Trump, who loves to style himself as a top mob don, facing down a RICO charge, recently bragged about a character reference he'd gotten from Sammy Gravano, once a hitman for John Gott. Succession, which collected a bouquet of Emmy, is a scorching dynasty drama, the kind we have seen in both the Trump and the Biden clans. Accepting his awards, the show's creator, Jesse Rupert, to its the inspiration. Rupert Murdoch, the cynical Aussie, who created the rainforest of disinformation in which Trump has flourished. There is a show about family, Armstrong said, but it's also about when partisan news coverage gets intertwined with divisive right-wing politics. In Davos, Israeli hostages get a hearing. He will turn 80 in April, assuming he's still alive. Another elderly resident of the was Ali, who was murdered that day. Hamas terrorists took his corpse with them to Gaza, presumably as a negotiating chit, and cruelly denying his family the chance of a burial and a place to mourn. I want to give my father a proper burial, she added, to say the prayers. In my talks with Goldberg, Perry, and Margaret, they took care to stay away from expressing any political opinions. Smartly so, the powerful in Davos take sharply different views about the war. What we do to the moon will transform it forever. Commercial moon landings will change how we look at our future in space. The moon stands alone. It is unique in the known cosmos. A solitary rock, one-fourth the widest of its host planet, the only place life has ever been found. And the moon is alone. It is desolate, sun-baked, and create a pocked wasteland that harbors little except what we bring to it, either with our minds or with our spaceship. But that is about to change. In the coming weeks, a rocket is expected to burst from Earth's atmosphere and send a spacecraft called Nova C careening toward the moon's south pole. If all goes as planned, Nova C, built by the private company Intuitive Machine under NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services program, will touch down on the moon about 7 days later, bearing chute of scientific instrument. It will also carry a collection of narratives stored on microfiche disk. Several cameras and a series of small sculptures made by the artist Jap that will be encased in a cube and stay on the moon in perpetuity. Ron DeSantis wasn't the guy. There was a little bit of all this. The emphasis on ideological wars, the strange occurrences in that barbecue place the night the blizzard started. Yeah, Mr. DeSantis, very relaxed and chatty about the brutal weather approaching, was interrupted by climate protesters. Ron, I have a question. A man shouted, then kept at it. Excuse me, I'm doing this, Mr. DeSantis said, cutting him up as the protester was led up by security. I know, but you are interrupting and you are being rude. Everyone else is listening, and you are butting in. A minute later, a second protester apparently tried to get on stage with a banner, but from the back of the room, all you could hear was shout about the climate, followed by a thump and an ooh from the crowd as a security guard tackled him. Mr. DeSantis made a joke or two about the situation, then continued. Republicans opposed to Trump see a last chance. Parties altogether attempts to thwart former president's march to the nomination. The first presidential primary in the United States could be the last stand for the anti-Trump Republican. Since 2016, a shrinking band of Republican strategists, retired lawmakers, and donors had tried to oust Donald J. Trump from his commanding position in the party, and again through one Capitol riot, two impeachment, three presidential election, and four criminal indictment. They have failed to gain traction with its voters. Now, after years of legal, cultural, political crisis that upended American norms and expectations, what could be the final battle of the anti-Trump Republicans won't be waged in Congress or the court, but in the packed ski lodges and the snowy town halls of a state of 1.4 million residents. Ahead of New Hampshire's primary on Tuesday, the old guard of the Republican Party had rallied around Nikki Haley, viewing her bid as its last best chance to finally pry the former president from a top two is the party. Anything lower than a very close finish for her in the state, where moderate independent voters make up 40% of the electorate, would send Mr. Trump on an all but unstoppable march to the nomination. Be buried near the marks for the right of the price. Famous London cemetery is nearly full. Managers want to reuse the old graves. And death, as in life, it is expensive to have famous people as your neighbor. That cost gained attention in the British news media last week, after the historic site notified the public that it had begun an effort to add a new grave site. Many pointed out the capitalist irony of such a high price tag, suggesting that the large fee for a plot near Karl Marx would make the so-called father of communism turn in his grave. Marx's tomb is a major draw for the cemetery, and visitors pay £10 or about $12 to explore the ground. In Davos, hostages are held. The annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, is largely an opportunity for the powerful to mingle with the even more powerful. For the most part, I spent my time there last week listening to government leaders. Iran's foreign minister strung me as an exceptionally talented dissembler. And schmoozing with the business leaders, think tankers, and officials at Davos' famous private dinners and after parties. But the most moving stories I heard came from some of the least powerful people who attended. I opened my eyes and feel my throat close. Rachel told me, describing her mornings over the previous 100 plus days. I say a Jewish prayer and ask, let today be the day. And then I say, pretend to be human. And I put on this costume because if I am a ball on the floor, I can save him. Some companies keep diversity programs under the radar, while many businesses minimize the initiative others are doubling down. The law firms upon which you turn to for legal advice concerning DEI are themselves violating the law. Over the past 2 years, as Isan and his colleagues at the law firm Jenner and Black prepared the briefs for the affirmative action case the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on last year, Mr. B had a realization. If a higher education institution like Harvard were the first target of litigation about diversity, equity, and inclusion, America's corporate boardrooms were probably next. Mr. B began working with dozens of Fortune 500 companies to evaluate their diversity programs and ensure that they were on solid legal ground if they were understood. If companies lighten up on things that are ineffective, that could be a good outcome, Dr. D said, noting that mandatory anti-bias trainings have been shown to sometimes even worsen bias. But I do worry that the baby will go out with the best of the water. Morrison Forrester said it had been in the process of opening up the fellowship even before the lawsuit. But many employers worried that their DEI initiative could be challenged legally under Title VII, which deals with employment relationship, or Section 1981 of the 1866 Civil Rights Act, which covers contracts. Helping super drivers switch to electric vehicles. A small share of motorists account to about a third of gasoline usage in the U.S. The key to cutting emissions from cars and light trucks that are hitting the planet could lie with America's super drivers, the small percentage of motorists who drive on average about 110 miles per day. While the average American driver travels about 13,400 miles per year, people who buy electric vehicles today tend to drive them less than that, limiting the climate benefits of switching to cleaner cars. It is ridiculous the amount I spend on gas. The report had identified areas that have a disproportionate number of super drivers. In Weymouth Township, New Jersey, roughly 41% of motorists fall into this category because the many residents commute more than 50 miles to Philadelphia for work. U.S. textile industry battles for survival. Apparel makers say a century-old trade law is undermining business. The garment industry is among the most price sensitive. In his 40-year career, William had seen nearly every step in the erosion of the American garment industry as general manager of Eagle Sportswear, a company in Middlesex, and see that cuts, sews, and assembles apparel. He hopes to keep what's left of that industry intact. Mr. Lucas, 59, has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in training his workers to use more efficient techniques and offering financial bonuses to get employees to work faster. But he fears that his investment may be undermined by a U.S. trade law. The rule known as de minimis allowed foreign companies to ship goods worth less than $800 directly to U.S. customers while avoiding tariffs. Mr. Lucas and other textile makers in the Carolinas, once a textile hub, contend that the provision, nearly a century old but exploding in use, increasingly motivated retailers to rely on foreign products to keep prices low. Defenders of the rule say it is not to blame for the lack of U.S. competitiveness, but domestic manufacturers say it benefits China, in particular at the expense of American manufacturers and workers. It's just harder to compete with that. Mr. Lucas said someone just has to change the law. Someone just has to change the rules. Billionaires hope to profit in media. It's not happening yet. I said to myself, if this were financially upside down, salty snack food company, the answer would be no. Mr. Badger said of his decision to buy the Post in a 2018 interview. Time is facing similar headwinds. The publication lost around $20 million in 2023, according to two people with knowledge of the publication's financial picture. Time has weighed cutting costs in the first quarter of the year to help offset some of the losses, one of the people said. The very rich find it very difficult to lose money year over year, Mr. Doctor said, even if they can afford it. AI's vivid possibilities push toward the genius of silliness. We can't give it more of a vibe than a concrete idea. Previous version of AI chatbot placed the onus on users to give detailed artistic direction. Mr. M, who used AI in his work, said that using the latest iteration of chatbot was like talking to someone else with the paintbrush. I think that's a really good example of where AI is going, he said. We can be a lot more vague. We can give it more of a vibe than concrete idea. Then it can go and make the assumptions that where it needed. How group chat rule the world. Texting multiple friends at once, create a space for jokes, grip, or 24/7 support. When group chat are examined as a social phenomenon, they are often praised as a kind of anti-social media, a way to use your phone to get some of the benefits of an actual relationship, minus the drawbacks of a public internet culture. Their Greek choruses of 24/7 support can help people through divorces, grief, parenting, illness. There are others in which people's co-processing has them psyching one another up into breaking the law, as in January 6th, the insurrection, which dumped troublesome group chat into court the record. Conversation expanded into something else altogether, something bigger and more chaotic and less clearly defined, but which is humming along beside me and with me, even as I am supposed to be writing this right now. Often I feel that I am missing important messages. I find myself maybe wanting to circle back to them, but not really seeing a way to, because the chat continues without me, and so I let it go. Sports. A veteran at 25, Pulisic ponders his U.S. legacy, reflecting on new life at Milan and its impact on the next generation. Pulisic was still a teenager when he played in the centenary edition of the Copa America tournament 8 years ago. Appeal battle in prosecution of actor in onset of the death. Legal experts say traditional gun safety rules do not always apply on film set. A grand jury has indicted the actor Alec Baldwin on a charge of involuntary manslaughter for the fatal shooting of a cinematographer on the set of the film Rust in New Mexico in 2021, and the contours of a looming legal battle are coming to focus. The outcome of the Casnet trial, the state of New Mexico versus Alexander, would hinge on how jurors view two key questions. Should Mr. Baldwin have known of the danger involved in his action that day? And using a term of art in criminal law, did he act with a willful disregard for the safety of others? Primary is seen as the last chance to thwart the former president. I am nervous that if Harley doesn't get the nomination, then I'll be voting for the Democrat. A loss next month in a crucial matchup. Her home state of South Carolina, where she also trails by double digit, could curb her momentum heading into March, when 2/3 of all Republican primary delegates are up for grabs. Mr. Trump has echoed that message as he has campaigned across New Hampshire in recent days. Nikki Haley is counting on Democrats and liberals to infiltrate your Republican primary, he said last week in Portsmouth. Ms. Haley, he said, is endorsed by all of the Reno's globalist never Trumpers and crook to Joe Biden's biggest donors. After voting for Democrats in the last two presidential elections, he now calls himself an independent. We have to have two healthy parties, whether you are Republican or Democrat. Mr. C said, you have to have two teams to have a game. Trump used campaign as casting call for number two, seeing who'd butter him up the most. He paraded a series of likely candidates as he pursues a victory over Nikki Haley in New Hampshire that would send him on a glide path to the nomination. Mr. Trump seems to be holding casting calls for possible vice presidential contenders on stage, at his rallies and at other events. His goals are clear: show up the sheer breadth of his institutional support in the Republican Party inject a sense of inevitability into the race, and of course, if which underling will butter him up the most. A test of Me Too movement's staying power. The three potential candidates in New York's mayoral race accused of misconduct. I wish these men understood that there are many ways to be in public service, and sometimes it is best to lead by making room for new voices. Roughly 6 years ago, as the Me Too movement gathered steam, a credible allegation of sexual misconduct could end a political career in the United States. The Al Franken, a U.S. Senator of Minnesota, was forced to resign. A Democratic colleague in the House, John Conyers of the Michigan, was forced out of days earlier. 3 Republican congressmen also stepped down. Blake of Texas, Trent of Arizona, and Pat of Pennsylvania. Yeah, men run for office because they want to be somebody, she said. Yeah, women run because they want to do something. I tend to believe women, and I think we should start listening more to the women. Or utopian vision for the chick reactionary chick. Founder who has built nothing raised millions to construct a dream city. White clothes swinging model, actors, and influencers were dog tags that read Praxis, meet me in the eternal city. Iran's leaders say they don't want a war. Should we believe them? The country is asserting its military strength. That doesn't mean its leaders want to be drawn into a wider war. Why Don DeSantis wasn't the guy? He combined intensity and action, which might be the source of some of the weirdness that followed him and his campaign. They quit a job and sold their homes to go on a cruise to nowhere. By now they were supposed to be well into the first leg of the 3-year Life at Sea cruise, sailing from Ushuaia, Argentina to Punta Arenas in Chilean Patagonia. Instead, more than a month after the cruise was abruptly cancelled, a couple is stranded in an Istanbul hotel on the verge of becoming homeless. A woman had moved to Ecuador after renting out her condo, and a man recently diagnosed with cancer has delayed his treatment because he doesn't have the money to pay for. There's no place like Sin City for the holidays. After pandemic hiatus, my family celebrated Christmas in Las Vegas. It was almost the night before Christmas, and the house was winning. Its creatures were stirring in the second and the smoke. When my folks had their say over my child rearing, we joined one of Vegas's many melded subgroups at secular Jews who cherished and celebrated Christmas in New York, but decided that it all made a little more sense in the desert. I know some people disagree, but I think the Las Vegas is very pretty, my mom said one afternoon, appraising the mountains and the spear, the super orb now bulging from the city skyline like a municipal pimple. Then we happened upon the Erotic Heritage Museum. That was supposed to happen, my mom said, beaming. Welcome to the family. Alexis was in as if that was ever in question, and she knew enough to cash out. I feel like this means I stop now, she said. Is this the final troll from Lil Nas X? A mess of the internet may have lost its grip on virality with its new video. An anthropologist and acid book review tripping on utopia makes the convincing case that Matt and the cohort were key players in the first wave of psychedelic science, which began not in the 1960s but in the 1920s. Museum director had a second act as a barkeep. At the Francis Kite Club in New York, patrons discuss ideas over cocktails. In a sweep of beauty, harrowing brutality. A movie review. The saga of 1901 mission to control the tip of Chile is by turns blunt and subtle. Deep under Gaza traces of hostages, Israel says. Military takes journalists on a subterranean tour, pointing out cells and bars. This kind of warfare is unlike any other modern battlefield anywhere in the world. Jittery White House tried to assess Mideast tipping point. As attack on troops increase, officials see U.S. fatalities as the red line. Another day, another barrage of rockets and another spark that American officials fear could set up a wildfire of violence across the Middle East. They don't want to strike at Iran directly for fear of escalation, which only widens the margin for pro-Iranian groups. Does North Korea mean it at this time? Close watchers disagree on whether Kim Jong-un's threats are more serious. The country likes the unsettling enemies at sensitive moments. The United States and South Korea have elections this year. There is doubt that the North has yet built a reliable intercontinental ballistic missile that could strike the United States, but two of the North's main enemies, South Korea and Japan, are much closer. A war on the Korean Peninsula would be disastrous. For Beijing, an entire half-century of peace in East Asia, a period of unprecedented growth for the PRC, would come to a crashing halt, said John, a professor of Chinese studies at Yonsei University in Seoul, reporting to the People's Republic of China. North Korea will continue to increase tension until after the U.S. election, said Thomas, a former German diplomat who served twice as ambassador to North Korea. But at the height of tension, it will finally be willing to re-engage with the Republican administration in the hope to get sanction relief, some sort of acceptance of their nuclear program, and as main objective a reduction or even completed withdrawal of U.S. troops from the Korean Peninsula, Mr. S said in a rebuttal to Mr. Collins and Mr. Hacker's analysis. Since Mr. Kim gained power in 2011, he has committed to building North Korea's nuclear capability, using it both as a deterrent and as a negotiating tool to try to win concession from Washington, like the removal of United Nations sanctions to achieve economic growth. He tried it when he met Mr. Trump in 2018 and again in 2019. The attempt failed spectacularly, and Mr. Kim returned home empty-handed and in humiliation. He then vowed to find a new way for his country. Since then, the North has rejected repeated calls from Washington for talks. It has also rejected South Korea as a dialogue partner, indicating from 2022 that it would use nuclear weapons against South Korea in a war, and abandoning its long-held insistence that the weapons would keep the Korean Peninsula peaceful as a deterrent. It has tested more diverse and harder to intercept means of delivering its nuclear warheads. There is doubt. North Korea fired hundreds of artillery shells into waters near South Korean border island on January 5th. Last week, it said it no longer regarded the South as inhabited by fellow countrymen, but as a hostile state. It would subjugate through a nuclear war. On Friday, it said it had tested an underwater nuclear drone to help repel U.S. Navy and the fleet. The new drumbeat of threat, while the United States and its allies have been preoccupied with a war in Ukraine and the Middle East, had set foreign officials and analysts wondering whether the North leader, Kim, had moved beyond posturing and is planning to assert more military force. For decades, a certain part of the North Korean playbook has been to stage carefully measured and timed military provocation. Some aimed at tightening internal discipline, others at demanding attention from its neighbors and the United States, some at both those at once. But to several close watchers of North Korea, the latest round of signals from Mr. Kim feels different. Some are taking it as a clue that the North has become disillusioned with seeking diplomatic engagement with the West, and a few are raising the possibility that the country could be planning a sudden assault on South Korea.